All right, so today we're going to be talking about a few different things, and you're probably all here for a different reason. One of those may be just AI in general. You're starting to expose yourself and your firm to it a little bit more. Maybe it's hiring in general, so maybe you are thinking about beginning to hire or changing your hiring strategies as we're in Q4 and moving to 2026. Or maybe it's just a break after lunch. I believe AI is a tool more than it is a replacement. So I know that this can be a little bit of a controversial topic as we move into more and more AI and different tools that are coming up. I'm sure you've learned about different AI tools over the past 2 days, but today we're going to talk about how it's not just a replacement, but it can be used as a tool in your hiring processes. In 2026, what's going to be really important for you and your firm is making sure that you're making profit with a focus on culture. I want to talk a little bit more today about specifically in this room and make it a conversation of who here today is using AI with your firms, who's using it for hiring, and then if you've actually replaced any talent in your firm using AI. Before I do so, I'm going to go back a little bit more just to talk about why I'm here today and why I'm a credible source in a room full of attorneys. That's probably something that you'd like to know. I'm based in New York City, but I hire nationwide. I got into what I was doing after being in 2 very toxic work cultures myself and wanting to improve work culture overall. I was in the finance industry, and so was not having a legal background, but I wanted to make sure that no matter what I did moving forward, that I could help teams make sure that I didn't experience what I experienced. So after a layoff right before COVID, I entered a space of doing, a little bit more career coaching in that space. And then I trained a lot on LinkedIn and LinkedIn marketing for law firms. Through networking with firms, I realized that there was a big gap in the legal recruiting industry. Specifically, I used to hear at networking events or dinners, people were always complaining about a recruiter fee or that their recruiter would go MIA during the recruiting process, which I'm sure may have happened to many of you here. Or maybe there was only a focus on technical skills. So these people were being hired in either support roles or attorney positions, and they weren't lasting because they weren't clicking with the people in a small law firm. That's how I got started. The cards in front of you today will show a little bit how I differ from recruiters in the industry. I'm certified in workplace culture #1, so we'll be intertwining culture in our talks today about AI and hiring. #2, I'm flat rate. So that's something that a lot of law firms can use moving into 2026 to ensure that they can actually budget for who they would like to hire. And then I save law firms time. So again, based in New York, but I hire for firms nationwide. I'd like to start with a show of hands here right now of either, if you work for a firm or you're working with a firm who uses AI currently. All right, now I want you to keep your hands raised if you've used AI for your hiring strategy at all yet. Okay, and out of those people with their hands still raised, have you actually replaced an employee with AI? Okay, kind of. Great. Do you mind sharing the title? Okay, yeah, that's something we're going to touch on today. So she mentioned intake, and so there's aspects of it, like I'm sure that you have replaced, right? There's some that can and some that can't, depending on the area of law. Okay, perfect. When we're talking about integration of AI, I want to talk a little bit more about these specific roles that can be replaced. And so going back to when we were speaking about what we want to use it as a tool for, there's different tasks that can be replaced. So thinking about possibly like data entry or administrative tasks or intake. And so something that I would want everyone to be really careful with intake is taking our own customer experience. And so when we are, maybe when we call customer service or we're approaching a business, it can be one of the most frustrating things not to be able to access a human. And so being very careful of what part we are going to replace with intake, but during those initial stages, it's definitely possible. About 24 to 29% of small law firms are actually using AI right now. So I think when we saw a show of hands in the room, that went to show that's what we're seeing in here as well. Other than that, big law is seeing it more and more as we progress. Small law firms are taking a little longer to adopt it. I think it's about investing in the right software. And so thinking about how can we invest in softwares like Clio and other softwares that we're hearing about today to improve processes and efficiencies in our firms. So maybe not necessarily replacing an entire department or role, but the number of people that hold that title in your office. How can we make sure that they have less tasks to do, that they can get things done faster, so that we're not having to hire multiple, say, a specific type of paralegal or legal assistant? Other roles that we can replace and start to think about are data entry and billing. This can definitely get tricky when we start thinking about billable hours for sure. But I think with the progression of AI and where it's going, that's going to be something we can soon replace. Some more tasks to replace are document sorting, research, data entry, and also possibly language translation. So I know with PI firms, this is an area where sometimes we have to focus on finding different paralegals that are able to speak multiple languages. And so possibly moving forward, we won't always have to hire multiple paralegals for those firms. There's a legal AI specialist, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, named Jana Sad, and something that she has started to expose us to a little bit more, maybe give us some more knowledge on LinkedIn, are the new roles that are going to be evolving from AI. So we often hear about how we're eliminating roles and we're going to be investing in software, but we're not necessarily adding on more. But we're starting to see that even small law firms are starting to need different types of roles that are specific to AI. So you're all very busy in your firms, and as you bring on new talent, it takes a long time to be able to train on all of these new AI softwares and processes. So having somebody that can train on these different AI programs, it doesn't mean that it's an entire new role, but it could be a contractor as well. We're also seeing new tech and data roles emerging in small law firms. So again, not just elimination, but creating these new roles so that our firms are thriving. Something that I'd like you to think about of what to avoid is really what makes you and what makes your law firm special. So what do we not, we don't want to focus just on AI, but what do we want to focus on keeping that we currently have? A huge thing is relationship building and client management. And so when we're thinking about why our clients come to us or how are we different from the firm down the street, it's probably because of that client relationship and retention of whatever it is that you're doing. I have clients that make it a special experience when people enter the room and it's customized to their name and they know who's coming into the firm that day. That's something that AI cannot replace. When somebody calls your office and they still get a human, it doesn't mean that it's at the first stage, but while their case is going on, think about family law and empathy that's needed as these people are going through really difficult times. Lawyer judgment is another one for all the attorneys in the room. As you're working on your case strategy, that's very specific to you. So of course, there's a lot of worry around where is AI going and what is it going to replace? And I think all of us might be a little on the edge of our seat of what's going to happen next and where careers are going to go. But I truly believe that it's going to evolve as all tech has so far. The last thing is emotional intelligence. So when we think about AI and what it can and cannot bring as we continue on, we're going to be speaking about some soft skills next. AI doesn't read the room. So when we're getting client emails and we're hearing tone and clients are coming into the office with different cases, we need to be very careful about who is forward-facing first. All right, when it comes to these essential human skills on an AI-enabled team, there's a few that we spoke about, but I want to mention. It's not always the lawyer to the client relationship. It can also be who is working with the law firm. An example would be a client or a contractor receiving an email from an attorney that is written by AI. So being very careful of thinking about how it's being used as a tool and not just taking whatever ChatGPT is saying and pasting that into an email. I've received several. It's very easy to identify. So being careful that somebody doesn't think that they're being spoken to by AI, especially on private matters with a case. I can't tell you how far a personalized thank you note can go, and I hear it all the time from different firm owners that they're telling me client stories of clients that have written them thank you notes, but the same in reverse. And so that's something, as we move into more and more AI, we're going to see other firms continue to adopt this. But how can we stand out as small business owners and small firms with those customization techniques to make sure that we aren't just looking like another small firm that's adopting AI? Lastly, we slightly touched on customized client relations. So making sure if we're going to be creating more efficiency through AI processes and streamlining operations, how are we also going to enhance those client experiences? So when we talked about bringing on new roles at a firm, doesn't have to be a full-time position, but how are we making sure we're standing out and creating a client experience that is to remember and that we're going to make sure that those clients want to come back to us time and time again? Some interview questions to ask candidates, and this can be an open dialogue. I would love some questions if anyone has any when we get to this point. But I wanted to touch on what we should be asking and what we can use AI for. So I often hear law firm owners before an interview, maybe they have a trial, they have a big case going on, and I'll get an email 5 minutes before their interview letting me know they have no idea what to ask the candidate. Either that, or they'll take a very technical approach and they'll only ask technical questions and forget that, wait a minute, this person also needs to be a really good cultural fit for us. We still need to always touch on those technical questions. I encourage those to go at the beginning of the interview after you've made it conversational and you seem approachable in the interview. And then after that, I would want you to dive into culture. These are questions I ask when I'm interviewing candidates, but I often find that AI isn't automatically asking attorneys to ask these questions as part of their interview questions. So if they're using ChatGPT or another AI source to ask what questions to ask a candidate, this is often missed. The first question that you can ask is, why us? Why did you decide to take 30 minutes or 60 minutes out of your day to come here? And I actually encourage you to keep it very open-ended and see what they come up with first. It gives you the opportunity to see, have they actually researched your firm and to what extent? Have they just looked at the website, or have they taken the time to look deeper into you, your people, if you're in the news, or what you're doing as a firm to enhance your culture? It'll be very clear by the way they answer that question. The second would be, how do you see yourself improving our team culture? So when you're interviewing, it's also, how is this person going to change things for us? Not do they just have the skill set and can they do the job? Are they going to make things better? And I often ask firms when I am interviewing them myself to see if they're a good client for me and we're writing a job description. I'll ask them, what is it that they don't currently have? And they automatically always tell me, it's a technical skill, which is why we're hiring, or we need more hands on deck. But we can always get more hands on deck. What can we also get from this candidate, whether it's personality or community that they're going to bring, network, which also includes a book of business, which I know we all obviously hope that they have. But is there some personality trait or client relation aspect, whether it be support staff, the person that's answering the phone for intake? Maybe they're really good on the phone, but are they empathetic? Or maybe it's the attorney in estate planning that's going to be very client focused. And same thing, are they able to show empathy? When that client walks in the door, are they going to feel like they're at home and they're in a trusting environment? Being really careful with that. Another thing you can look for is community. Sometimes I have firms that tell me, we're very family oriented, which, by the way, be careful of this phrase. I often heard, somebody told me recently, and I've heard this a few times now from firms, they've chose to not use the word family-oriented because not everybody actually likes their family. So there you go. That's another perspective. So maybe thinking of the language that is in your job description and not, you may have a great family, but can we take it from another perspective to think of, what's another word that we can use? Maybe it's close-knit. Maybe before you write that job description, you also ask the people in your firm why it is that they've chosen to stay. They've all been approached by recruiters, I can promise you. Even your employees that have been there for 10, 20 years, taking a moment to ask them so you know what it is that's special about you, and then you can talk about that in the interview. Another question that you can ask those that you're interviewing is, what process do you believe that we can improve? This is really important with support staff, for intake, or a paralegal. This allows you to also identify if they're a visionary. Is this somebody who's going to come in and not just clock in and do a 9 to 5, but actually make things better for you and your firm? Lastly, what is your approach to AI? If you're a firm that is looking to invest more in AI going into the future, is this somebody that's very against it? Maybe they're old school, they're not even interested in learning what you have, but more importantly, have they used these tools before, and can they bring them in with them? Some questions not to ask. One of these came up very recently. First is, what is your current salary? So instead, you can pivot that. A lot of people will want to identify very quickly, are we in line? Even if you're not a salary transparent state, I would highly, highly advise on being salary transparent. It saves a lot of time. Give a range of about 10 to 40,000 is usually what I suggest, depending on the level of the role. As you increase number of years of experience, you would also increase the top end of that salary range. Instead, what you can ask are, what are your salary expectations in your next role moving forward? Be very careful how that's asked. The second, this came up recently, is, are you a US citizen? A lot of firms have some fear right now, depending on if people will be able to stay. And so this question has been coming up a little bit more and more. That cannot be asked during an interview. Be very careful. And then lastly, your commute. So some candidates will be, they'll tell us right on the resume, unfortunately, where they're based down to their zip code. You want to avoid that if you're a candidate. But on the other side of hiring, try not to discriminate too much based off of that commute. This could be somebody that, unfortunately might live a little far right now, but they're open to moving closer. And so a question that you can ask during the interview is, we need to make sure that our candidates or our new hires are here by a certain time. Is that going to work for you? Versus, really putting too much emphasis on their commute. Standing out in today's hiring market. So this is a big branding piece, and as AI increases, I'm going to take this from two different perspectives. But first, I want you to all sit with the statement for a second that culture is completely driven by your people. So every single person that you hire and decide to bring on your team, it's going to have an impact on you and everybody on that team. Here's the thing, it's in person and it's digitally. So the way that we decide to show up on a digital platform, especially as we expand our remote environments, is going to have an impact. And we can't always control that ourselves. Our employees are all active on LinkedIn. And so being, cognizant of what are they talking about? Are they talking about religion and politics? Have you had this conversation internally with your employees in the room? Taking this from another perspective with LinkedIn branding. I work with many firms that the first time they come to me, they tell me they don't even have a LinkedIn company page, which we automatically have to create to even hire on LinkedIn. But having that online presence, that doesn't make a great candidate question a firm's credibility because they don't have a strong digital presence. And there's AI tools that are making this much easier to complete. So with LinkedIn, if maybe you just have the basics on your LinkedIn profile right now, but a few key things and areas that I would suggest that you, probably not this weekend, but maybe next week when you get back to your firm, that you implement, is work with whoever is in marketing or handles your marketing tasks and create a banner that's really clear for your LinkedIn company page that maybe shows your firm at a cultural event or a team event and shows that environment. I would also encourage you to talk more about your firm on these company pages. It should serve as a second page to your firm website. It's also, if your website was ever to go down, it's a great example to have to be able to have another place to refer people if they do a Google search. Some things that do not belong in AI, in my opinion, in small law firms in the hiring space. The first is scanning resumes. There are a lot of AI tools out there that can help us scan resumes, especially as I hear often, there's 500 resumes coming through my Indeed application or my Indeed job posting right now. But as a small law firm, I would encourage you not to use ATS. Those are really built for some larger firms and companies. Conducting video interviews on round one, I see so much, as you can imagine, in just one session from interviewing candidates that I probably wouldn't pick up during a video interview. It doesn't give us the opportunity to ask follow-up questions, right? So AI is just automatically spitting out these questions, and it's very, it seems it's obviously like a robot, and we're answering those questions. And I often hear candidates are also not enjoying the process and sometimes won't even move forward. So be careful with those video interviews. Lastly, job descriptions. A lot of people are just generating job descriptions through AI. It's not a bad idea to start there and use it as a tool, but then go back in and further customize it a little bit, right? Thinking about what we talked about earlier when it comes to standing out from the firm down the street, especially if you're in a big city with a lot of similar firms. How can you talk about what it is that you're doing as well as show it digitally? Going back to LinkedIn, like we spoke before, and having that digital presence, every time that you're having a firm outing or a firm team meeting, making sure that you're documenting that and posting it on LinkedIn. I know there's a few people in the room here that do that very well, and showing us what you're looking for. Hiring really never stops. We constantly want to be speaking about our firm to ensure that people are always interested so that when we do go to hire, that they're interested in us already. From a retention perspective, we talked about constant recruiting, but asking your employees what can be improved, actually taking the time, maybe in Q4, not just for annual reviews, but asking it from their perspective of how can this firm be improved. Maybe it's from a job description that a recruiter sent them that maybe they were slightly intrigued by, but they stayed because of your culture. And also, what experiences do they have with softwares that are not currently being used in your firm? So making sure that we're asking them what they want to see in your firm so that they stay long-term with you. Okay, so I want to get to questions and takeaways. I want to leave some time for this today. I'd love to know one takeaway that you have in general. If it's AI or hiring, we're in Q4 right now. We're approaching 2026. And I would love to hear a little bit more about what you are doing moving forward, thinking about this as a conversation in the room, and also how can we help each other. And something that you learned about AI that we talked about today. I know we had one person share. I don't think anyone else has replaced talent, but if there's tasks that you currently have replaced or are thinking about replacing moving forward in 2026, I would love to hear a little bit more of that, as well as any questions about hiring and AI. Sure, great question. So she was asking about that we have, there's a microphone coming around, but I'll repeat the question, where we talked about different interview questions that can be asked. But in addition to that, other areas of AI that can be used during recruiting. That's a great question. The first thing that I would say is using LinkedIn for your job posts. And we'll talk about profile in a second, but going into your job post, there's areas that AI will help you with this, especially if you are creating a LinkedIn post and you're like, I don't really know how to write a job description. It can aid you and actually guide you through that process. I did hear the other day that LinkedIn has a few new features that are coming out to assist us in the AI process as well. I also like using AI specifically, and in addition to the interview questions, it could also be used to review resumes. So not necessarily scan them, but you could ask AI to pull a few things out. So I see this specifically in commercial and residential real estate. So if you're looking for specific experience that a candidate has, and maybe we're reading a lot about commercial, but we're scanning several different resumes, we could do a search for residential specifically. Good question. Yes.
Hi. So one of the things that we've had a real problem with LinkedIn specifically is it's kind of a couple of things with the AI. Is one, a lot of our scanning tools have really been omitting a lot of really qualified candidates, and we've had to go back and say like, well, why did AI omit this? Like, those are some of our best hires. So how are you kind of maybe competing with that, as well as we're seeing a ton of junk jobs that are written by AI and applied to by AI and then scanned by AI. So how are we able to maybe cut through some of that? Or like, what are some telltale signs other than obviously when people get a little lazy and keep the chat GPT? Is this sufficient enough for you in the question at the bottom of the job description? How do you kind of cut through both of those things?
Sure. What is the size of your firm?
We have 8 people, 3 attorneys, 5 support staff.
Okay, so first thing, I would not be using the AI to scan the resumes necessarily. What I would do is ask specific questions in the application section and get very, very specific. So LinkedIn has the ability at the end of a job posting, after you post, it asks you what types of questions that you want to ask. And so making sure that you're asking those questions so that it's automatically omitting those applications, not based off of qualifications. Something that I saw with a client recently that they wanted me to ask the client something that would show if they were detail oriented or not as well. And so LinkedIn actually gives you the ability to have somebody answer no instead of yes, if that is ideally how you wanted them to ask it. So an example would be the spelling of a law firm name, if it's pretty tricky maybe, and asking them if it's spelled correctly. You'd be surprised because these candidates can scroll to the top and see if the name is spelled correctly. Many will not, and it could easily eliminate those types of candidates. So I would completely get rid of AI in terms of analyzing resumes. So it's probably an ATS system that the firm is using. It's usually more used in corporate, but there's smaller versions of that used on LinkedIn as well. So I would just be very careful with using that. In terms of reviewing resumes overall, there are AI softwares out there that can be used to analyze them in groups, but I usually find the most success with asking those very specific questions in the application section. It's also a good opportunity to make sure that a robot is not being used or some type of AI to fill out these applications. Just like there's fake job applications, there's also fake candidates out there. And you want to make sure, just like when you land on a website and it's asking you to hold the bar to make sure that you're not a robot, that these candidates are being asked these questions as well. Any other questions?
I'm coming.
There's good.
Hi, my name is Jimena. I have a question in regards of when you're interviewing someone and they are using like a AI tool for the interview. How can you boycott that, or I don't know, ask any question that might send them to another direction?
Sure. So are they using it, you're feeling like they're using it as they interview, or they've prepped with an AI?
I'm sorry.
Wow.
You have the camera turned on, and you know that they are seeing something or reading something because their answers are really perfect, and you begin you have an idea that they're using AI.
Yeah, I've had
and I'm like, hey, show me my screen, show your screen or something like that. They can show the screen and there's no ChatGPT there because they have special AI tools for interviews.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. I've come across this. And so often people are able to place this tool so well on their computer or right above on another screen that you can't tell that their eyes are moving. To me, it feels pretty robotic so that it's clear that they're reading off of it. And I usually do eliminate candidates after that. Depending on the round of the interview, you can't necessarily ask to see their screen, right? But that's when I would encourage 2 in-person interviews instead of just 1 to see how they're interviewing outside of, being on 2 screens possibly. Another situation that comes up more and more is AI written thank you notes. I can't tell you how many candidates we have eliminated in a final stage because of that AI written thank you note. It just shows that they couldn't take 5 minutes to write a customized thank you note. I find it very obvious because after communicating with a candidate back and forth, right, myself and the firm, we know their language style. We know what they like to talk about, how they speak. And so when that AI written thank you note comes in, we usually know. It's a really good point. Good question. Any other questions? So we only have about a minute left, but as we approach the end, I will be here for a little bit longer. I'll be hanging out. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. I'd really encourage you in this last quarter of the year to think about how you're hiring in advance. Often people think of that they need to hire way too late, and then they can't put AI processes into place. And it's a much better outcome if you strategize moving forward. Again, I'm Erin Anderson. Thank you for having me here today. It was lovely to speak with all of you, and I hope to be in touch.